I don't remember much about this game in particular.
So what I'm kind of trying to think about is how to convey how I think about ZVP because it's been the strongest matchup for me for a few months now by like
Hmm.
12%. So it's a very winnable matchup, and I think the method of thinking about it is the strong edges that you can leverage directly against the opponent. Because if you're not like leaning into them, you think about the wrestling capacity of you lean into your opponent and they can feel your weight. If you're not doing that, then there are a bunch of unknowns. Agitate him and ascertain the pattern of his movement. So if you're actively leaning into the opponent, they're showing you what they have. Otherwise, they're losing all of their probes and stuff.
Right.
So understanding those windows and how to go kind of ham. And there was another thing that I was kind of thinking about from a session that Pig was giving to Risky, who's a EU GM. He was talking about how a lot of times we think about matchups in terms of what Dark is doing, but players like Dark and Sue create such a tight kind of rope that they walk on where if one thing gets fucked up, you're dead. And for the rest of us, we're not as good as Dark and Sue. So making things just a little bit easier on us at certain points is something that I think is totally fine to do. There are some purists who will say you should only do the most optimal thing all the time. Whereas from a realistic human standpoint, we don't have the amount of time to dedicate to the game as Dark and Innovation, so we should kind of play the game on our terms rather than on their terms. So,
Right, that makes sense. And that's kind of how I'm feeling in terms of the matchup, like that I'm just kind of walking on a knife's edge and I'm just dead.
yeah. So the first thing that I want to cover with you, and I'm actually doing this for myself in my play, that's thinking about your first overlords you're making with a very clear objective of what they're supposed to be doing. So I'm going to open up the email so I can start typing notes at you. Here's the Kestnuts. Okay, so I'm going to draft an email to you. Shabams. Okay,
You're cutting out a little bit for me. I don't know if it's Discord or if it's my computer.
Okay, is there any issue in the stream? Oh, the stream is saying that I'm cutting out. I'm cutting out or Kestnuts is cutting out?
Yeah, Amadis says I'm cutting out. Am I still cutting out? Can you hear me okay?
You sound good to me.
Okay. That's really weird. You sound fine now, so I think whatever it was just a like intermittent thing.
Okay, so let's look at CVP. The first thing I want to address is Overlords, because that's kind of the quiet area where you can make some mistakes that just fuck up your whole progression and kind of cause a train wreck of supply mismanagement. So let's think about the jobs. 13 Overlord, we'll say first Overlord crosses to C wall off. With the change to Chrono, they can't get a stalker out before you can fly to this pedestal. So this is your safe spot for the first Overlord. You can look for a similar spot on all the maps. There's usually one outside the natural expansion. And the thing that you're looking at with the first one is, are they going Nexus first or Gate Cyber Nexus, or is there nothing? Those are the main things you're looking with that first Overlord. Second Overlord is the proxy one. We've talked about this before, where you cross and then go here. I think I would recommend, I don't know if you're doing it this game, I would recommend opening Evo Chamber Ling Drop every single game. Your micro is pretty good, and finding ways to dictate the pace of the game a lot more, I think will help you a whole bunch in knowing what's happening in a ZVP, and also give you opportunities to set the opponent off balance instead of just being kind of at the mercy of when are they going to attack me next. I've been going for a Ling Drop in ZVP almost every game, and I do it with the 3-hatch build. I don't do the 2-base Ling Drop kind of thing. It's the same build you're doing. You just drop the Evo at 50% Ling speed, and then you go up to 10 Lings. And then 10 Lings is going to be enough where you have 2 that you can just bump the wall, So you bump the wall with 2 lings, and then the second Overlord arrives here. You load them up and then drop the main. And when you drop the main, you're going to know exactly what's happening because they want to protect their probes. If they're making adepts, you'll see adepts. If they're going Dark Shrine, you'll see the Dark Shrine. Here, you see a Twilight. So the 8-ling drop is the way to get a read in a way that's aggressive. It's not a passive scout. And there isn't really any build that hard counters this. If they go for Phoenix first, oftentimes you won't be able to get the lings into the main, but you can just drop them back onto the ground and then try and delay their third. So that's the one scenario where you're loading up the lings and there's already a Phoenix shooting the Overlord. If it's a Stalker...
Well, that's scouting information in itself.
Yeah, that's correct. If you drop it and there's a Stalker, you can still unload and kill the Stalker and go in. That doesn't really stop the ling drop.
Okay. So you're doing this instead of going for early Overlord speed?
Yes. Because it accomplishes the same thing, but it's in an active way that can actually accomplish something for you. The Overlord speed, it doesn't increase your strength. So we're talking about like the wrestling capacity of your weight leaning into them. If you get the Evo Chamber, you unlock your melee option, which increases your fighting power against them. And if you're going 3 hatches, you have a bunch of larvae, which means you can make a bunch of lings. So the Evo Chamber, I'm feeling like, is almost universally the stronger choice than Overlord speed, especially for players like us who are not Dark or Sue.
Right.
Because if shit hits the fan and you see, oh my god, I'm ling dropping and they're going for the Zealot all-in, you have melee going. So you can mass a bunch of lings, and the lings are going to be a lot stronger fighting that Zealot all-in than if you took Overlord speed. Overlord speed would be 100-100. That doesn't help you actually fight that attack at all. Whereas the Evo Chamber and the 8 lings does.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's a little less clunky to fit into the build than Overlord speed.
Yeah. Another kind of thing to point out about the hatch tech drops from Zerg is that for the past year, they've been kind of debating, do we want to nerf this in some capacity? Which is Blizzard's subtle way of saying this is strong. This is a strong thing to do. It's much stronger against Protoss than it is against Terran, mainly because the Terran's most basic unit can shoot Overlords, the Marine, and then Hellions are really good against Lings. So against Terran, it's not quite as good. So you scout all of this at around 5 minutes. You can see it's a bunch of gateways. What is it? 6 gateway. It's going to be Prism, Adept, Glaive, lots of stuff. And we have a bajillion dollars here. So the thing, let's look and see where the money spikes up. My guess would be the money spikes up when you're scouting. And that indicates you're not quite sure what you're making whenever you're scouting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Half the time, even though I see what the Protoss is doing, I'm not sure what that means.
Okay, so before we get to that point, I want to actually preempt the problem that you're going to have with the ling drop. Anytime you focus on harassment, it demands some of your attention, so oftentimes your macro will slip. And a lot of times, you'll ling drop someone, and you get supply blocked, and you don't build anything behind it. They kind of defend, and you end up behind. So the key thing there is make an Overlord before you drop the lings in, and then spam drones / queens as you're attacking. So you have a very simple task. Hatcheries, larvae, drones, and then you're focused on your lings.
Right.
Because we're humans, we can only really focus on one thing at a time. So we want to know what our task at home is, and the simplest way to get ahead in StarCraft as a Zerg is to spam drones. So the ling drops are going in. So yeah, like right as you're looking at their bases is when the money kind of spikes up. You can take the third base here, this third location, super fast, especially if you take the gold, because you have more minerals coming in, and you also want to get creep connection between the second base location and this gold base location pretty soon. So that's an adjustment for this map where the fourth base can go down super mega hyper fast. Like,
even this early, like 4 minutes 50.
probably
that is not too early.
Probably 4:30. If you see the gases here, if you see gases at the natural, you're good to go. Because their attacks are going to hit pretty late. And you're spamming lings to solve your defensive problems anyway. So if you're on you have 2 gases right now, that's perfect. And you need a shit whack of larva to be able to leverage your gold base. Your drone count is awesome right now. You have 52 and you have 6 queens. That's good. That's really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't usually have problems getting to my target economy.
Okay.
I think I even managed to deny the third base a couple times.
So the inject uptime could be quite a bit better. I'm actually going to just put that as a note. Inject uptime, very important when going melee lings and banes. And the macro hatch can go down pretty fast too. So be liberal about those expenditures, especially with the gold base. It's not really something that ends up killing you. The only time when, say, taking this 4th hatchery would potentially kill you is if they were going for the 30 probe zealot all-in, where they get charge and they pull off gas and they just all-in you. If you took it then, that would probably kill you, but aside from that, you're safe to take that base super early.
And that would have hit way before now at this point anyway.
Yeah.
I think that hits at, 5:30?
Another thing that you could try is Roachbane before you go into Hydrabane. There are a lot of different Twilight aggression builds, like this Glaive Adept thing, or if they go for the Archon Prism type of aggression. Having some roaches just as a stepping stone to get to Hydrabane is a way to spend your money a little bit more effectively than just massing lings. And you don't have to go into the Ravager Ling Bane. You can just use some roaches to make yourself a little bit more sturdy and a little bit less exploitable to stuff like large numbers of zealots or force fields if you need to make some roaches. So a good timing for that. You can even drop your Baneness and your Roach Hornet around the same time. And that's when you have your second gas. So let's... as the game progresses, they kind of set you off balance here. So if we can really iron out the early game and give you a really crisp early game, then your mid game is just going to be massive in terms of how much value you put into the game. And that's the universal kind of skill to develop across your matchups too, is how do I make a fuckload of army value over the course of the game? And
right.
Where am I having little hiccups in my progression there? Okay, so yeah, I'm thinking like 4:30, you could probably smack down the third here. As you're powering up your economy, I would recommend a few more creep tumors early. If you're injecting, three bases here, I feel like there's not quite enough room to spend all of that larva for your income. And this area especially really needs some creep for you to be able to navigate these bases. So thinking about emphasizing one creep tumor here going back from the gold base and one going forward from the second base would really streamline all of your defensive stuff for the whole game.
So maybe instead of injecting with this queen at the third, as soon as she pops, dropping a creep tumor instead?
Yeah, that would be really good.
Okay. That seems sensible.
And then, you see these drones being transferred, you could just plop down the third. And this is 4:30. I think this is totally acceptable, because you need supply anyway. And the hatch is giving you 6 supply, and you're almost supply blocked. You have enough money to take a base that would help you with your creep plan, and it would also help with your ling production. And you could also drop the Baneness and the Roach Warren around this time, too. That would just allow you to make a really, really strong, well-rounded composition that isn't really weak to anything. The only adjustment that you would make is if you flew into the main here and you saw double Stargate Void Ray, cancel the Roach Warren or don't build it, of course.
Right.
But aside from that, Roach Bane is a really nice option against Protoss that comes online a lot faster than Hydra Bane. If you're going Hydra Bane as the first time you're being really aggressive, they can oftentimes rush out Storm to deal with them. Whereas Roach Bane, you just need Roach speed and Bane speed, and you're basically good to go. And you can smash into them really fast.
That makes sense. So what you do, like, you defend their pressure with Roach Bane and then counterattack while you tech up to Hydra?
Yeah. Yeah, you can just do some Bane run-bys, or oftentimes you can just bonk them if you get a really big supply lead.
Just, like, max out on Roach Bane and go kill him?
Yeah, with Roach Bane, generally you're going to want to hit him at around 170 supply. That's kind of the magic window where Protoss has a pretty low supply. They've finished up their saturation for 3 bases, but their army production isn't really in full swing yet. And that's when Zerg is getting close to their first max out. So if you're thinking about kind of when do I want to be putting on pressure against Protoss, 170 supply is good to start kind of bumping them with a pretty big Lair Tech army.
That makes sense.
Okay. So from here, we're kind of...
This is so painful.
Yeah, we're losing a bunch of drones to Adepts and all this. But look at the bank here, and imagine having a Roach Warren and just how much more quickly you could spend that pre-lair. Because the lair is delayed with this style where you go Overlord speed and melee, and that's fine. But with a Roach Warren, you're spending 75 minerals, 25 gas per larva instead of 50 minerals, which would be really nice for defending this Adept stuff. And then you get Roach speed, and then you can really kind of dictate the pace of the game. So we're effectively playing from a really bad position after this attack.
Yeah. And I think if I hadn't been trying to be so cheeky with my lings on his side of the map, I had a better defense, but I mean, that's kind of picking nits when I was floating so much money.
Can I show you the game against M. Canning from yesterday?
Absolutely. Here, let me give you a lead.
Because this is kind of like what I do pretty much every game, and he played super aggressive, and I defended everything, and it was a Roach Bane game, so it's kind of doing all the things that we talked about.
I think I was watching this yesterday.
Yeah.
Kind of half-assed, because I was doing other stuff. But I remember you playing him yesterday.
Okay, so ZVP, we're looking at how to create some clear, assertive edges where you can be hitting them with some pretty strong Zerg value. The Ling drop is pretty much always good. So the first Overlord's going across just to see the wall situation. Second Overlord's going to check for proxy, and then it's going to fly over to the left to prep for the Ling drop. You can see that arc path. Third base is up. Ling speed's going, 2 off gas. Second queen to the first queen pops. These 4 lings here patrolling. The last game, they didn't send their first adept really fast, but this is the first interaction where you can get completely destroyed by a really good Protoss player. So I lost a Hurricane in a clan war. He's a Korean pro. But his first adept just killed like 3 of my drones, and I was playing the rest of the game basically dead. So 3 minutes 10, Queen and Lings defending the first adept is like the first big important thing. Kind of like defending the Reaper.
Right. Yeah, 3 drones at this point in the game is a pretty devastating loss.
Yeah. So Evo Chamber's going, now I'm up to 10 Lings, and I'm going. And behind that, I'm making an Overlord, or no, yeah, 2 Overlords and drones, and 2 Queens. So Queens, drones, Overlords. I use the steal command to steal the 8 lings into the Overlord, and then these other 2 are just my main army now. Poking the wall is nice, just to kind of give them an alert. One thing that a lot of times people don't talk about, but really matters a lot playing against a human opponent, is how alerts influence what the opponent is looking at and thinking about. So I bit the Twilight Council, which says, hey opponent, I have Zerglings. I know what your wall looks like. I have fighting units that can kill probes here. I can kill a probe if you send it to take a 3rd base. And it pulls their attention over, you see the minimap, to the bottom left side of his territory. That's what he's thinking about. Just while the Overlord is going over here. So this is the real benefit of doing a 10 ling production kind of cycle, where you have 8 for the drop, and you have 2 for the poke. So it's like two little prongs. Both of them are comparatively small because it's the early game. But this causes Stalker to be out of position, and then lots of mining time is being lost. And I'm making 10 more lings. I don't remember why, but I have a pretty good worker count, so it's not too bad to make some more units. Generally, it's better to make the wrong unit than to pause or get supply blocked or have a hiccup and not make anything. More lings is an edge, where I can punish a 3rd, or I can defend adepts, I can defend what's in the prism. I have options with lings. I have options with drones.
You're also kind of delaying his warp prism harass by doing this.
Yeah. So, melee. The Roach Warren was taken before the Bane Nest. Roach Warren is just a nice expenditure against Twilight in general. If they go for Charge Zealots, Roaches are pretty good. If they go for Glaive Adepts, Roaches are pretty good. If they go for Charge Lot Archon, Roaches are pretty much necessary. It's not the best unit over the course of the game in ZVP, but it is a very good stepping stone unit if you're against Archon aggression.
That makes sense.
And then another little step to make things easy on yourself is creating some kind of spine braces for your territory. So we have the main base in the bottom left and the 3rd on the top right, and I put a spine on each side. Because a lot of times they'll try to do the same thing that we just did, which was lings poke and lings drop, where you're hitting them on 2 sides. Protoss is doing the same thing sometimes, where they have a prism on one side, a prism on the other side, or maybe an oracle on one side and a depths on the other side. Just making things a little easier, dropping a spine and dropping a spine.
It did look like he did make 2 prisms, didn't he? Yeah. So.
So yeah, now we have in the worker department, I'm slightly ahead, not super ahead.
Right.
So these were 4 Banes from 4 Lings that survived the Ling drop. It's always nice.
Oh.
So now we're ahead, for sure.
That makes me very happy to see.
And now you can just go Roach Bane. You dealt a lot of damage, and now the Protoss feels like they need to do a lot of damage. So doing something like trying to go into Hydra would give them an opening. Whereas if you mass a bunch of Roach Bane, they have no opening, and you stay ahead.
Yeah, they have no time to rebuild their economy.
Yeah. So Queen Roach defends, and the Lings sweep the 3rd base. It's a pretty common interaction where, say you've built a bunch of Lings, and now they're being aggressive with Archons. That's another comeback mechanic for Protoss. If they kill Lings with Archons, they can get back in the game. Whereas these Lings are really good at denying a fresh base that doesn't have a lot of army to support it, but fighting the Archons, they would be cleaned up really efficiently by Protoss. So I have like 54 workers here. It's not a super good economy, but I know that theirs is worse, so it's forgivable to make units before your saturation goal. Roach speed is done. Bane speed is not yet done. I think I
All things considered, M. Canning's not nearly as behind as I would have thought. He's really good.
Yeah. And the ling's running around and stuff. Basically dead. But yeah, the Roach Warren is a really powerful piece to just make yourself a lot more difficult to kill. Kind of goes with the name of the unit. Roaches are difficult to kill IRL, so.
It's just a sturdy option, basically.
Yeah. And he's pretty much dead. We can kind of zoom through it.
Yeah.
But notice I am transitioning into Hyderbane now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's after having a bunch of roaches and stuff to deal with the Prism aggression.
Right, that makes sense. GG.
Okay.
Excuse me.
There you go. I will label this one and attach it to the email as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, you give me party leader. Not lobby host.
My bad. Wait.
Got him.
Oh, okay, there we go. I've been finding this map more and more difficult to play on lately.
Yeah, this is an IQ test map. Because the rush is short, so a lot of times they send the probe early. And
right.
You can take the base at another location, but it's never quite the same. It's just awkward injecting and transferring workers and fixing the creep and stuff. So, yeah, you're going 15
Yeah, I think
hatch.
you have to go 15 hatch on this map to be sure.
Yeah.
Or so I've been told.
Yeah, that's fine. I think it's better to be steady in your footing and maybe delay your income by a little bit than to play the entire match from being off balance.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's not a safe base for probes.
See, somebody told me recently that that's a really disrespectful move to do because you're assuming that the opponent isn't paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times the opponent isn't paying attention, and a free probe is a free probe.
Well, isn't that the fun game theory of StarCraft, though, where certain people will rule out a choice as a possibility because it's not ideal in the most ideal of circumstances, so they'll pay less attention to something that you could do. So if you just do it, then you're kind of an outlier who punishes that lack of attention.
Right.
I think it's one of those play how you want kind of things. You want to get the second queen a little bit earlier. You're going second and third queen. Early game's pretty
second
nice.
Queen?
Well, I usually make the second queen after the first queen finishes at the natural. So you make your first two queens from the natural.
Oh, yeah. That I must have screwed up there.
Yeah. Not a huge deal.
Yeah.
Okay. So some stalker shit.
This opponent always makes two stalkers to snipe overlords with. It's just kind of their shtick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a good time to just make 10 lings. So if we went for the same Evo 10 ling opener as we discussed before, 10 lings can beat those two stalkers. So they're basically stuck on two bases with this build. That's the downside of going stalker instead of adept, right? Is they don't trade as well against lings. So if they're going to commit to a two base all in, your 10 lings would see that. If they're going to send this probe, it's dead. The stalkers can't help the probe take a third base. Two adepts can. Maybe, if they micro really well, or if they're kind of between some mineral patches or something.
Right.
So you're droning up. Good supply management, not blocked. I think your decision to delay the spores when you saw double stalker is a good decision. It's a lot more gas that they spent than going for zealot or adept, so you kind of ruled out that possibility. Like the drone pull, though, some people will still do stuff like that. 2 Stalkers into Oracle. Hooray! Okay, so you see a bunch of Adepts. This is a pretty good Overlord spot, right here. I've been trying to put it here a little bit more often, or even on this little edge, where it is high ground relative to the other area, and you do see those move-outs.
Okay. I've been trying to just park lings at this ramp outside the natural, but it doesn't work out as often as I would like.
Yep. Okay, so the first key issue, I think we may have discussed this a while, but we tend to forget stuff if we don't address it regularly. Overlords are the entrances and the exits to your base. So here is very important, and here. So I mapped this out when I was on my Christmas holiday with the Pact fam. I didn't play any StarCraft, but I did reference Lambo's ZVT build, and I decided where my 19 and 31 Overlord are going to go. So my first 2 Overlords kind of do the L shape and then scout the opponent. The 3rd and 4th Overlords go to the entrances to my base. The 3rd Overlord goes outside the natural, so right here, so I can see the first Adept go into my natural to attack me. The Overlord after that goes outside my 3rd, so I can see if they're going to attack me from that angle. And it just allows you to get your units in position on time to be able to defend stuff. It's super important.
Okay.
Because if you saw that, all your queens could be at this front edge of the creep, and the lings are right behind it, and then they look like an idiot, because they just shade into a huge Zerg swarm, and everything gets cleaned up, and they're like, wow.
Right. Instead, I'm kind of caught with my pants down here.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. All the Adepts are on my queens. But you still have the numbers to be able to deal with this. Come on, queens. Come on, girls. There you go. Okay. So layer's done.
So lazy with the queens. Ugh.
Yeah. I think something like this, where you have the queen of the 3rd, just adding her to the group. Your queens are so close that you can just use your queen group to inject the 3rd. You don't really need her to stay disciplined in that position. It would be better to have her DPS against the Adepts and stuff that are shading forward. Your Bane speed's good. Making Banes would be pretty important here. The key read that's kind of missing is that they have a Manor Nexus. They don't actually have a base that is being saturated here, and there isn't even gas at the natural that's mining. So this is an all-in. I don't know why there's a double forge. That's silly. But, yeah. If you knew that, I think making a bunch of Banes would be pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Oh, you're doing a pretty good job cleaning this up. But now imagine the Roach Warren, too. That would just make things a lot more simple.
If I could have sniped the Warp Prism, that would have been huge, too.
You can take a 4th base amidst all this. I know it's stressful and there's a shitload of stuff happening, but taking it just to get some supply and larva, and also create another target. Adepts and Phoenixes are bad against hatches. Like, look at them attack this hatch. It doesn't even do anything. They're good against light units like drones and lings. So taking the 4th, that just allows you to recover a lot more quickly, because you have more larva income, so if you lost some drones, you can re-drone faster.
Yeah, and I'm kind of larva starved here.
This would be a good period in the game to stack up some injects a little bit. So if you're going around to do your injects, just do 2. Do 2 instead of 1. I think you did it with the one in the main there.
Yeah.
It's good. So, Roach Warren, But the most important thing was not really making those 10 lings to punish this opening from them, and then overlords at the entrances to your base. If you had those two things, I think a lot of what was happening would have been obvious, and you could have just massed a bunch of Roachbane and been in a super good position.
Okay. That seems reasonable. Now I do have one more ZVP that's more of a like really, really hard all in compared to even the last two games.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only time I've seen a shield battery contain that was actually kind of hard to deal with, so
No, I'm part of the
could you pass the lead back to me? Thank you. It's like, why can I not start this replay? David Kim, please.
Okay, so if you position your third and your fourth overlord outside your natural and your third, that is a moral victory.
Okay.
Henceforth, let it be known. And the next time we see each other, if you show games where you did that and still lost, I will just probably shed a tear just being so proud. Well, you may have died horribly to adepts, but the overlords are in position. I'm so happy. Okay, let's rock and roll. Another Odyssey map.
Yep.
Okie dokie. So,
Yeah, this is...
ping for me the entrance to the natural where you're going to put your third overlord.
The entrance to my natural?
Yep. Wow, perfect. You could probably put it a little bit more forward, like right here.
Okay.
And then now the entrance to the third.
Entrance to the third, over here?
Sure. Good. And then the next two overlords I usually put going into my main. So there and there. So I can
Right.
see oracles or prisms. Oh my, okay, what the fuck? Okay, wait, what?
Yeah, I told you this was bizarre.
Okay. Uh-oh. Wow. So, the most important thing with this kind of setup is to put 2 drones on the probe. Step 1, that's the most important thing. So the drones are going
4
by.
probes, or 4 drones on the pylon?
No, 2 drones on the probe. It's a lot more difficult for Protoss to drop a structure if it's being attacked by 2 workers. And the reason 2 is important is because whenever one of your drones does an attack, it stops moving temporarily, and that's when the other drone moves around. So 2 drones on the probe is the most important initial step. So putting down this shield battery would be harder if you were attacking the probe. As opposed to here, you're attacking the pylon, they can kind of work with that. So fast zealot. This is amazing. Okay. So you have your third up. This is funny. Okay. So 2 drones on the probe. I'm going to put that in the notes. Because it kind of snowballs here where if they get all these structures down, then you're going to have a bad time. And another thing is distributing the drones. How much HP does a shield battery have? I actually don't know. Because the response might be a little bit different than against a cannon. So it has 200 shields, 200 health, and then 100 energy. Is there a photon cannon? No, there's not a photon cannon as a reference. Can someone in the chat tell me how much HP and shields a photon cannon has? That would be great. But I think keeping 4 on each one, because notice here, because you committed fully to one of them, they could cancel and then use the other one. So the 4 drones per building thing is mostly so that you can kill it as soon as it's finishing, as opposed to killing it as fast as you can. Because you could do 8 drones per building, and you're going to kill them faster, but they can cancel them, and they're effectively wasting more of your mining time. So this is another scenario where you ling drop. If they cannon rush you, or they shield battery rush you, or whatever, ling drop is even better than it would normally be, because usually they're really focused on defending your counter swing at the front wall. And sentries are awful against ling drop. You're basically ahead, though, after this. They do have a decent probe count, but you have your 3 bases online. The problem here is not knowing what to do with the gas. And I would say their opening is kind of a non-trigger situation, where you can just do the same thing. You can go Evo Bane Nest. You can go Roach Bane into Hydra Bane.
Okay.
A Roach Horn is a little bit more important against a sentry opening like this, mainly because they made them so early, and they could like force field off this ramp into your main, or they could force field this area and give you a really bad time. So
yeah, I mean, I'm just going to die to this push here.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's mainly due to a lack of a gassy unit that you could have made earlier. So the key moment, let's see when the gas started spiking up. So you're attacking this, you're attacking the adepts, killing the adepts, amazing. So you see 100 gas, that's melee. So you drop the Evo, you take your melee. You also have enough for a drop. I would just use this Overlord and drop as soon as the Evo chamber is done, and then drone really hard behind it. And then you could take a Bane Nest, and a Roach Warren, and a Lair, and then just kind of kick it into gear for your macro. Because here, this is sort of a wishful attack, where it's like, I hope that after their shield battery thing, they don't have a wall off. You could bet, and just imagine how many times this Protoss player has done this to Zergs. I would wager that this is not the first time this has happened. So they've accounted for, what do I do once the Zerg has stopped my shield battery rush thingy? I need to wall off, because they're going to make a bunch of lings. So they're probably more comfortable than you are here, because you're like, what the hell was that shield battery shit? What the fuck? Oh, I'm going to go see if I can punish them. Whereas they're thinking, ah, yes, step 1 of my Protoss bullshit plan is complete. Now on to step 2, where I make sentries and wall off and then go for a 2-base sentry all in.
Yep. I've never seen this build before, but he's probably done it 100 times.
Yeah. So we ling drop.
Yeah, a ling drop would have been really nice here. If I wasn't fucking awful about my tech timings.
One thing that is useful to point out, which kind of adds to the merit of going for a ling drop, is the area of potential danger for the Protoss. So with no drop tech and hatch tech, the only area where you can be dangerous to the Protoss is here, right at the front wall. If you have ling drop, you could go up this cliff, you could go up this cliff, and if you get into their base, you're dangerous in all of their territory, which is horrifying if you're Protoss. I know this because I play Protoss sometimes, and it's just awful to have lings all over your base. But if you have a nice clean wall, it's really fun to just place force fields and shut them out and get ahead.
Right.
So, where's... If you had an Overlord here that just stayed there the whole game, then you would have seen this move out, and you could have made all Banes with your Ling Bane. Technically, I think you can defend this attack. I think.
Yeah, if I'd reacted correctly, I think I still could have held this.
Yeah.
But I was making 12 drones at the time this moved out, so...
Yeah.
If I had been making, like, 12 pairs of Lings and morphing Banes, I think this would have gone differently. Because, I mean, I'm 10 workers ahead already. I don't really have any pressing need to go from 47 to 59 drones when he's only on 2 base, 2 gases.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a scouting fail.
What would your defensive procedure be? Let's say your Bane Nest was done. If you see this attack with your first Overlord, what do you do?
Spam lanes, make banes, split my army up so that I can surround them as much as possible, attack from as many angles as I can. Because force fields are just going to wreck me if I try to attack from one direction.
You also have...
Probably pull the creep queens to fight too.
I would pull all of your queens. Mainly because the main base is injected, and you can just make a queen in the main and pull your queen. So getting all your queens together and making queens from all your bases is something that I haven't seen consistently from you in these kinds of crisis scenarios, but is a very powerful move. If you're looking at the supply right now, you have 25 supply in army, and they have 40 supply in army. I don't know if it counts queens. Does it count?
I don't think it does.
I think it does, actually, because it's 25 plus 59 is the 84 you have. So it does count queens. If you don't have your queens, what do you have? Like 17? 17 supply and lings?
Yeah. Not even. Like 15 supply and lings. I've got 29 lings right now.
Oh, it also counts your production stuff, too. Yeah, so pull the ladies. Pull all of them, add them to your creep queen group, and then fight with Lingbane Queen. Queens are really hard for them to kill, so they buy you a ton of time. And it's a big part of what you've invested in. They can transfuse each other. Sentries basically don't deal damage to them. Stalkers don't trade well against them. Zealots do. Yeah, now we're done.
Yep.
150 shield, 150 health, and was it 200 for the...
Yeah, 200 for the shield battery, 150 for photon cannon.
Yeah, I think you would still do four workers per, but the 2 drones on the probe is still the most important thing.
Okay.
And I don't think I ever, at least historically, whenever I'm talking about cannon defense, I haven't punctuated that is the most important step. The 2 drones on the probe as fast as possible makes it a lot harder for the Protoss to execute the cannon rush. Like, once they have a few buildings, then it kind of snowballs and it gets harder and harder to defend. Whereas if you have the 2 drones on that first probe initially, it's very awkward for them to find places to drop the buildings.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Moving on, I've got some ZVTs to look at.
Okay.
I don't know if we have enough time to get to ZVT and Z, but I think ZVT is more important.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I'm in my ZVT. I've gone from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence, where it's like I know that I'm bad, and then now it's to the point where I know a strategy that works, but I have to mentally call out every single macro step along the way. It's not memorized fully, so I understand how the matchup works now. Bless Lambo, thank you. But yeah, I have to kind of think through each step, so it's a little bit slow still.
I feel like I'm pretty much constantly bouncing back and forth between conscious incompetence and conscious competence in this matchup, so...
Yeah.
I think this is the dirty ghost hellbat all in. Yeah, that's this game.
Shit. I lost to this yesterday. Can someone do the ZVT command for his guide? I made it a command on my channel. And I typed up notes, and they're in the description of the video. So if you want a written build order for what he talks about in his 50-minute video, you can get that as well.
So I scout this right away.
Yep.
I'm not sure if the drone pull was the wise decision.
I don't think so. I think the main difference would be making something like 10 lings instead of this, because this doesn't really come online with anything until ghosts are out. And we see the Ghost Academy here. They can start a ghost before you're going to kill this tech lab, I think. Yeah, they started Ghost here, so it didn't really accomplish that much. I would say now moving back for sure. Killing the tech lab, it's not bad. That's not bad to kill the tech lab. They can't lift the tech lab, but now they can finish the Ghost and lift the barracks, so this would be the perfect time to retreat if you do pull the workers.
To just pull them back and let the lings finish the job.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a very special build. Against this, I think going for a pretty different game plan than your standard ZVT is quite good. So one of the things, if they have the Ghost Academy, even if you kill the barracks, they're kind of committed. So they're probably going to want to make another barracks at home anyway. So killing the barracks doesn't mean that the Ghost shenanigan is over. It just means that now the Ghost is a defensive unit as opposed to an offensive one. So the approach that I would recommend, and I've fought Ruff once and beat him when he was going for this kind of thing, is thinking about a 2-base speed roach no upgrade plan, where you have Roach Queen and a lair instead of the usual 3-hatch, ling speed, double upgrades, or overlord speed, that kind of larva heavy, mineral heavy approach. If you have a bunch of cloaked units in your base super fast, you're going to have a bad time. And it's really hard to defend 3 base locations with Hellions running around and Ghosts with stealth.
Yeah, I felt like my lair was way too late this game, so I think it's good to know that I'm kind of on the right track at least. Again, this is kind of like the shield battery bullshit where this guy probably does this all the time, and I've seen this maybe like 3 times in my entire career as a Zerg, so...
Yeah. This is sort of like dealing with DTs that walk in as well, where you could defend your 2 bases with 1 spore where your 2nd spore is. So if you just uprooted and moved that spore here, and you had lings at the high ground, you're effectively defending 2 base saturation. And you can see here, there's nothing at the natural. So if you have 2 base roach, you're getting further and further ahead. You're not obligated to do anything with these lings. It would be nice if you did, but defending the lead that you already have is probably the better choice. Yeah, lair instead of overlord speed here would be a really good adjustment that allows you to
I'm kind of just tunnel or autopiloting here, not tunnel vision.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell to do, so I'm kind of just like you said, it's better to do something than to do nothing, so I'm just kind of trying to do something.
Yeah, the downside with this is they usually make a bunch of Hellions with it. The thing about Hellion Ghost is they don't have gas for tanks, which means that roaches are an unusually good unit. Another thing is that they usually don't have Marines, because they're making Ghosts from their barracks and Hellions from their factory. So ZVT is a matchup where just massing a bunch of roaches is, in the vast majority of cases, a bad choice. And that's because most of the meta options for Terran are really good at dealing with roaches. Whereas this is a, like, what the fuck kind of approach to Terran versus Zerg. So, going for just your sturdy roach as, like, your core unit is the strongest possible choice. And I think, to talk about the mindset of this, it's really annoying. The first time, like, I was pretty salty after losing to this. And it's kind of like, alright, this kind of thing, if you look at it from this replay perspective, it's like, this is very simple to deal with. I can see all the limitations of it, but when it's happening, you're just surprised and alarmed for the entire 10 minutes of the game. So, be okay with that. It's annoying to deal with, but if you do your homework, the next time this shows up, you'll have a much more clear kind of set of plans. So we're just imagining a huge roach army here. Speed roaches. What do they have against speed roaches? Nothing.
Not a damn thing.
Nothing. Cool. So, for a quick little list, a to-do list versus Ghost Hellbat. 2 base, we'll say lair after ling speed, roach speed, overseer plus roaches plus queens, and I think you're going for like 40-ish workers for speed roach production. They really have fuck all to deal with that. If they go for, say, 2-1-1 double medivac marine, this progression is horrible. Going for unupgraded speed roaches. They can just kill it super easily. But Ghost Hellbat, they're dead in the water. Just kind of by virtue of what they've gone for. And then we have one spore at the natural. With Ling Queen support. And what's the other thing? So we're delaying third and Overlord speed in favor of more tech. Cool. There's your ZBT Ghost Hellbat counter procedure.
All right, ready to jump into the next one?
Let's go.
Don't tell me I'm lagging out or something. Oh, good. I can hear you again.
Zerg versus Travis. What league is the student? Diamond 1 to Master 3. Depending on if you're in an upswing or a downswing.
Yeah, this bouncing in and out of Masters every season is a little bit annoying.
Yeah. Being the type of player who is in and out of GM has to be pretty annoying too. There was a couple seasons where I was kind of in that area where I wasn't consistently in GM, and that's pretty annoying, especially if people were like, oh my god, what happened? What happened to you? You used to be good. Oh no.
Yeah, I get the same thing.
Oh dear. Alright, so I would highly recommend trying out his build. I'll put the video link to that in the...
You're talking about Lambos?
Yeah, did you see it yet?
I bookmarked it a while back, but I keep forgetting to watch it.
Yeah, it's really good. It's, I would say, something that you could just listen to, and you would pick up a lot of the main points. Practicing the build is probably the most important thing for just having a stable progression that gets you ahead. That's kind of the thing that I was noticing in a lot of the ZVTs that I've been losing over the past couple weeks, is I feel like Terran does something aggressive, and then I'm just playing ZVT from behind, which is hell. And it doesn't really matter whether they're going bio or mech or this or that. It's just you're behind in workers, you don't have the tech you want, and you went for the wrong stuff, and it's just awful. So with his build, he squeezes out the third earlier than usual and delays his ling speed a little bit, and then gets a fast overlord speed. So he has more larva than the standard builds we've been going for. He has earlier scouting vision, and he has ling speed to deal with the Hellion dives and stuff. He has a safety Bane nest to defend Hellbats, and then he goes for a fast lair to have overseers and to kind of move up the tech tree, and then goes double upgrades. So it's a little bit of a different approach than against 2-1-1, where we usually go for fast double evo melee upgrades, and it's more focused on having the defensive options you need to defend a lead moving into the mid game. Your drone count is awesome, but your supply blocked is all hell.
Yep.
Damn. Damn, damn.
One thing I've kind of been experimenting with in ZVZ or ZVT, and you see I'm doing it here, is sneaking out a group of like 12 lings to go poke into his natural while he's harassing with the Hellions.
Mm-hmm.
When it works, it really works. But when it doesn't work, it really doesn't work. But I think in this game it paid off for me.
Mm-hmm. The Bane Nest timing is 3 minutes 40. Just to kind of start.
So this is late.
Yeah, just to kind of get the timings in there. If you take it at 3:40, it'll be just in time to make some lings whenever the Hellbat Marine Medivac attack arrives.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll go for lair. Going for ranged upgrades is fine, he was saying, because you can go for a mass of Hydras to defend your 3 base and 4th base, and then go into melee later if you find out its bio after the fact. This is...
Right. I mean, I'm basically committing to Roach Hydra here, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think my thought process was, this looks very mech-ish. I've been having a lot more success with Roach Hydra Viper than Ling Hydra, Swarm Host, or whatever. So I'm just going to drop the Roach Warren and prepare to go into a Roach Hydra game.
That stuff. You've got the roaches, making drones, take a 4th base. One thing that will help a lot with your mid-game is understanding the primary objective for creep. So on this map, getting creep on the other side of this grass. The grass is a really big pain in the ass because you need vision on the other side to advance your creep tumors, whether that's a unit or an overlord. So I really like on this map, once you have this bit of creep here, giving you vision in front of your natural, putting a couple overlords here, and then dropping creep and then sending your queens. If you can get that really advanced creep accelerated in front of the 4th, it's much easier to defend the big attacks. Because they pretty much always march from their production here, over to this high ground, and then down over here. And then if they get sieged up outside your 4th, it's a big problem. But if you have a ton of creep kind of by this pool here, then your defense is going to look really strong. You know, the 4th base can go down a lot earlier than this, especially if you have a bunch of roaches. I would probably say once you made those 10 roaches, you were good to go to drop the 4th base. That's enough defense to be able to hold off big attacks in that direction.
Yeah, for sure.
You're still ahead. You want to make Hydras. Hydra is the unit that you can kind of spam without too much negative consequence and minimize your ling production because that is a lot more costly for larva and it doesn't really trade well against mech units. Banes trade reasonably well. Your creep's pretty good. Pretty good. If you can get it up here, that would be super good. Oh, nice. Queens of the Watchtower. That's cool.
Yeah, I don't remember where this game actually went wrong for me, to be honest.
Another little benchmark is whenever your Hydra Den is up and you're making Hydras, it's safe to drop the Infestation Pit. That's a good little checkpoint. Infestation Pit is very, very cheap. So once Hydras are live in the game, then you're pretty much safe to get into your hive stuff, whether that's making some swarm hosts from the Infestation Pit or making some Vipers. 430 spores against Terran, unless you're against 2-on-1. It's a good timing to memorize.
That was a very odd Banshee timing.
Yeah. The roach count here, I think, is a little bit high. You get pretty big diminishing returns. I probably would have stopped making roaches at the 10 that you made, because then you'll have more supply for swarm hosts, which are more of like a value over time unit. You're in such a good spot right now, though. I think you forgot about these.
I did.
Damn. It's a pretty big chunk of your supply. It's like, you're so ahead. Oh, those little dudes. Come on, lings. Yeah, so thinking about Hydra, the Hydra, I've said this about Zerg versus Protoss in Heart of the Swarm. I would say things like the Hydralisk is the center unit of your Zerg versus Protoss mid-game. But it's not really the case anymore. It's more Ling Bane and Hydra is kind of a supporting unit just because of Adepts and Storm. Whereas ZVT has become more of that scenario where the Hydra is reasonably good against Bio. It's very good against Mech. And if you're in the mid-game, spending your 3 base economy into Hydras and then making a decision about, do I want Hydra Ling Bane Swarm Host? Do I want Roach Hydra Viper? In both cases, having a good Hydra count is a really big asset to just being able to take good fights. Roaches are kind of hard countered with exceptions of like Ghost Hellbat type of bullshit.
Right.
But aside from that, the Hydra is a really reliable choice to spend your 3 base economy and also allow you to get into Hive Tech stuff or Swarm Hosts.
That makes sense. So my roach count, I was just too heavy on the roaches.
Yeah, I think having a small roach squad just as a frontline buffer against the Hellbats is fine. You could also fill that role with Ling Bane. And with Lambo's style, you drop the Bane nest at 340, so you're going to have potential for speed Banes anyway. But yeah, having the Hydra as the primary unit, the exception is against Bio. It's kind of the secondary, like against Protoss. But against Mech, having a really, really strong Hydra count over the course of the game is really powerful.
That makes sense. Do we have time to go over a couple of ZVZs?
We could.
I kind of lost track of when we started.
Yeah, I think we started. What is the time now? Yeah, it's been a bit over an hour.
Okay, yeah, we don't have to go over ZVZ then.
Cool. Well, you could submit one for the casting and analysis, which we're going to do in a bit here.
Yeah, I might do that then.
Cool. So I'm going to attach the M Cannon game, but it was good working with you.
Yeah, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Nice. Well, I'll see you around. Good luck having fun in your games.
Yep.
Swarm them. Nice. That was a good session. I like it. Alright, I'm attaching the M Cannon game to the thing, and then I'll take a quick break, and then we'll get into the casting.